The anonymous sources. I mean, don't like not who,
Exactly.
but like what were you thanking them for?
So we had 11 agents, assistants, ex-agents, and ex-assistants give us testimony and documents about what it was like to work at the top 4 agencies during the year of 2018 and 2019. And then we built a lot of the dialogue and vernacular and corporate doublespeak based on their testimony.
Wow. So okay. So when you talked earlier in your intro about like heavily researching, you were very serious. Like this is very much like a dissertation on the toxic culture of these agencies.
From the outside, we get to look like the South Park guys, but really we're like Woodward and Bernstein.
Wow. Well, tell us about deciding to work together on this script, because I mean, Jim, have you had you've never co-directed before, right?
No, this is the first time.
So tell us about the decision to do something so collaborative with another director.
I mean, we've been writing together for a while, but this was kind of the first project where, really from its true roots, we kind of were building this together. And I don't know, he called me one day, and I was at the grocery store with my mom, and he just said, "Hey, man, what if I got like a letter in the mail inviting me to a no strings attached sexual encounter? Like, what should I do about that?" I was like, "You shouldn't go. That's weird. Like, don't do that." Like, what
he actually said was, like, "I'm with my family. Don't call me.
This is the time to have one of these weird conversations, man." And then, but no, I was like, that's actually very interesting. I would like to actually follow that to see where that would go. And it kind of snowballed into this weird thing about letter services that would lead to adultery in a strange way in a time where it's very hard to do that. Yeah. And it kind of snowballed into what we see now.
But then, like, when we were writing it, we had like these long-form conversations for a year, basically, about this like Twilight Zone episode of a cool idea for a small-budget movie. And then we sent the like 57-page draft to our producers and our buddies, the McManus brothers, who are Emmy-nominated screenwriters. And they were like, "What's going on with this agency stuff? Like, that's so much more interesting than anything else." And then it took us 4 months after that to do all the research that it took. So I tweeted being like, "Hey, is anybody in the agency world? I'd love to interview you." And we just got this shitstorm of like a bunch of people being like, "My roommate is an agent," or like the girlfriend of an agent. She comes home and complains all the time about this world. And so we ended up doing 4 more months of research on what was going on during the WGA packaging fight in 18 and 19. And then that became such a third of the movie, basically. It's like big data, envelope service, and then agency stuff. And all of it is about lying and bullshitting with people. And so it's kind of perfect that we were talking about agents, because that's ground zero for liars and assholes. And so it just ended up working on our benefit. And so, like, really, although we signed up to do this letter service, Eyes Wide Shut movie, erotic thriller comedy, it was still like it required so much work to get it right.
Well, I think it's fascinating how it works, because the sort of the mystery component of it drives it, but there's so much truth, especially for someone who sort of lives on the orbit of Hollywood. You feel the authenticity of the things that you're exposing, in this world. And that makes it's so rich that it adds so much complexity to the character. I guess my question is, well, you were saying earlier, I guess, it's like, is this going to damage your career? Like, are agents going to turn against you? But you feel like someone who has done some very compelling independent films, and should or has probably been attempted to be snapped up by an agency at this point. Is that not something that, so how have you encountered that world that you're now exposing to us?
It would be inappropriate for me to comment about that. No. So this is what my lawyer asked me to say. No. So I got signed at WME, one of the biggest agency in Hollywood, right before Sundance. It was like hanging out with people at Sundance, and this guy is actually a good buddy of mine. He's my brother's roommate all through college. Ended up at this agency, and that's how I ended up getting in. So I had about 6 agents in 2018 that were, like TV, film. I have many different things that I do. So I'm a writer, actor, director, editor, 1,000 different things, but none of it led to any money. None of it led to any jobs. I love that everybody laughs at that. But like, I think we all know that it's bullshit, and that like legitimately you have to use social media and platforms to get real income, and not through these cheese dick Hollywood people. And that was 2016 that was happening. But it took me many years to get that kind of education so that people can laugh at it now. Like now I can laugh at it, obviously. But no, when we were making the movie, we did it in secret because we knew we'd get in trouble or discouraged from making the thing. And then the WGA packaging fight was happening. COVID was happening. We made it in 2019 in November and December, very luckily. But then as soon as we signed with the WGA, we had to fire our agents because WME was not a signatory to that organization. And so I didn't have to worry about it, really. Neither of us did. And like 99% of the work that I got, even after winning Sundance, was through Vimeo, was from people having seen the work that we were doing online and then saying, oh, these guys could be good candidates to do things. It had nothing to do with Hollywood. And I think that's only become even more desperate. It's only become more that way, that like you kind of have to prove yourself as a filmmaker before anybody takes you seriously. It has nothing to do with Hollywood. So we felt completely free to make fun of these assholes.
We're seeing so many big budget films now being directed by really unique writer-directors that have this really strong
Chloe.
voice.
Yeah.
Yeah, so many now. And it's really making these films better.
Eternals kind of sucked, but yeah.
Oh, really? Oh, no. Oh, man. That's.
Clapped. Holy shit. Oh, Caleb. All right, sorry. That makes sense.
I'm so sorry to hear that. Well, they're not all bad, though.
No, they're not. They're not.
And, but,
That's like centuries-long war of getting independent sensibilities into blockbusters, and it's so difficult to do. Where, like, Spielberg was able to do it with Jaws and his entire career. Same thing with George and Robert Zemeckis. Like, I think, like, focusing on audience attention is very important, but it seems like that's not what people are focusing on now. Like, craftsmanship is not part of the conversation. It's about entirely other things that are the main conversation in film.
Yeah, I mean, and also it's like, sort of figuring out exactly why certain people are chosen from, going from something that doesn't necessarily have, special effects in it and throwing them into a $300 million production. You're sort of like, why are they being chosen? Is it for their writing, their directing, or some other reason? But it's interesting, and I guess my yeah, I mean, I'm sort of like, I'm curious to know, as this world is consistently looking at people, filmmakers like you that have really solid films out there, how, with all of the different roles that you play, if these kind of offers are starting to come your way or not. Yeah,
Definitely not now.
No, certainly not. Fucking after this movie, no fucking way. But no, like, I mean, Destin Cretton did a great job with his Marvel movie, and like lived in the tradition of Jackie Chan, of like, and the Wachowskis, of like, oh, we're gonna do something that's practical effects, really insane physical violence on a bus. Like to impress audiences. I mean, and then Jackie Chan started out, he was a big fan of Buster Keaton, and like to live inside of that tradition of cinematic impressing audiences is just absent these days, it feels like. So it's very difficult to level up and to still, get good reviews and also win box office rewards. It's a very difficult thing to do. We're very lucky in that we made this movie through the help of the internet and completely circumventing the Hollywood system. So we ran a campaign on a platform called WeFunder, which is like this kind of Silicon Valley startup platform that only had 2 movies on it when we, built our campaign. And we had non-overlapping investors from the film world come in and support our movie. And not only did we get the full budget of the film in the first 12 days of running this campaign, which never fucking happens in Hollywood. Sorry for cursing. You guys are used to movies about face sitting, whatever. But legitimately, if we had tried to make this movie in Hollywood, it never would have happened. It would have taken 12 years, and so many of our friends live in that development hell where they have to convince people to give them any money, and it never happens. And then they're like, oh, well, I should have done something in my backyard.
Yeah,
and
we've been in the development world, and it's brutal. And for a story like this, and I think maybe we're guilty of it. Maybe we write stuff that's too weird for people and executives and stuff. I don't know. They don't want to take a chance on it. We're just like, we got to make something. We got to just shoot this.
But it's not too weird for the internet. And
yeah,
so
the internet's
many people,
weird. They want it. There's a hunger for this stuff.
Clearly,
there is.
Look at all these perverts in the crowd. I mean, think legitimately, there is a hunger for unsanitized content because
and
there's
weird shit. People want to see weird, unique stuff. And so I don't know. You got to do it yourself, though.
Here's a question that maybe PJ you can really weigh in on since you've been friends with Jim for so long. There is something. There's this unique quality to the roles that Jim plays, and I'm obviously it's in the writing, but there's also something about the performance. It's like incredibly compelling for how unlikable sometimes the character can be, and I can't tell if it's totally based on the charisma of the performance, or if if another actor was in that role, would I care? Or if it's it's that mix of performance and writing.
Yeah,
that's untaken.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's part of it. I mean, Jim's obviously a very talented actor, but I think it's also. I mean, he's so unlikable to the point that you feel for the guy. I mean, I think
there's a pathos there.
I mean, he's so bad at his job and just sad in his sham of a marriage and relationship. I mean, to the point where it's just sick, and you're like, just get this guy a win. For the love of God. And so by the end of when he finally gets better at lying, which is sadly the only thing, as an agent, the one thing he can be good at is being good at lying. And by the end of the movie, he actually does get good at it. He finally impersonates a federal officer to get to the bottom of it and get to Johnny PayPal.
Crime. Yeah.
And that's sadly his big win, where he suddenly gets good at his job.
The audience is like, thank God.
Thank God. We finally got some answers through this maniac.
Yeah.
And we got
federal
to
crime.
Yeah. And to get to the end, to get to his exorcism, you're like, oh my God, thank God. This guy finally exorcised his demons and was honest with his wife, who was also cheating. So maybe that's weirdly even at the end.
That was my dream, that at the end of the film, people would watch this movie and go, oh, this is what an agent is. And this guy is bad at representing himself. Why would I have him represent me?
But I think there are unlikable people in the world. I mean, I think when you're writing, executives especially are always like, well, I don't know, they got to have some likable quality. The audience isn't going to connect. I think the audience connects to unlikable people all the time.
Watch Karen videos all the time. It's like I'm watching people get taken off of airplanes and shouting and being awful, and it's like, why am I so fascinated by this? It's
they
because
get more eyeballs than likable people.
Absolutely. Walter White kills children in the show, and then still you get these fucking stupid executive notes being like, I don't know if they're likable enough. And it's like, what does that mean? That doesn't mean anything.
He should kiss his daughter or something, before he
save
goes
the cat.
on this murder tirade.
The creator of The Sopranos said likable doesn't mean anything. It's actually about if you can create a character who's good at their job and is interesting, it doesn't matter if they're likable or if they're a good person. The audience will watch them anyway. And that was 30 years ago that he said that. Really, I feel like that word likable has become such a pervasive inadequacy trap that many screenwriters get stuck in of oh, well, they have to be likable. And it's like, that doesn't mean anything.
But Walter White and Tony Soprano were good at their jobs.
So that's what's interesting. So with the beta test, Jordan is awful at it and bad at representing himself. And the audience, instead of feeling the kind of ambition pornography that they have with watching Walter White or Tony Soprano, they finally get to feel more powerful than the agency world. So every time you laugh at Jordan, you feel more powerful than that world that has kept you down for 100 fucking years. And at no point would they ever feel happy that you are feeling good about yourself. And it's a great feeling. I was sitting in the back, I was standing right over there with PJ, and there was a couple of moments of, I get grabbed in the groin, and then I have to say, I love it. This is great. and to have everybody laugh at that, it's like, yeah, fuck these people. It's a great feeling. Finally, the power is coming back to the people in this weird power dynamic that we all submit to instead of feeling like we can make fun of these people. Like, as soon as you laugh at these people, immediately their power disappears.
And also, he does finally get better at lying. Like he finally does actually get through to the letter service, but then realizes how unfulfilled it is, and finally has to just come clean because the lies didn't actually make him feel any better when he does get to the bottom of the letter service. But yeah, it's funny to watch him slowly get better at being a federal officer.
Was the reveal as to what the actual beta test was that always sort of something you had from the beginning and you worked backwards?
Yeah, initially we called the movie God Knows What because in the monologue that Jessie Lauren, PJ's wife in the film, has, where she's talking about the couple on the plane fighting with the champagne bottle, which is terrifying. She says, and she stabs her in the ribs over God knows what, and then the TSA gets involved, and it was such like a poignant moment of like it is this letter service, like that's the thing, that's what God knows what is in that situation. And then we kept writing it, and it was like, no, this thing should be this thing that this weird fucking dude is doing in his basement. This rogue agent is hijacking the internet to then completely circumvent the system, to then derail these people's lives to become a billionaire at the end of the film. And that felt like us. Like, we felt like Johnny PayPal at the end of the film, where we made this movie for nothing, like hijacking the internet and making it in my garage and doing the color correction, doing the edit entirely with these 4 hands. And like, we were able to dismantle the studio system and the agency system, you know, kind of like sneaking gunpowder into the garage of the building and blowing it up. And the fact that any of y'all can do that is amazing. This guy's nodding. He's like, yeah, I love it.
Check this guy. Check it. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about sharing the directing between the two of you. How did you guys sort of figure that out? Is that in part a process of giving each other sort of feedback when you're in front of the camera, or were you both sort of
constantly? There were moments where I'd come back and be like, I think I did a good job, and PJ would go, this ain't it. Like, we gotta
that wasn't it, dude. Yeah, we gotta go in the back room and fist fight and figure this out. Yeah.
No, there were only a few times where it was like, what are we gonna do? Like, this is not working. But
shared panic.
The way that we write is all out loud. So like PJ and I will have this full Google document of what the movie will be, and we have these like thousands of notes that we'll take and thousands of phone calls of like, this is a good idea for this thing. And then we'll fit that in. Usually it's PJ doing it, and he'll transcribe it into a Google Doc that's shared with me. And then he'll organize it in a way that functions in a screenplay format. And then we'll go away for a while, for like a week in Big Bear or something, or my place. And then we have a table that's like 8 feet long. He has a laptop, I have a laptop. And then we go through the Google document and then act it out. So we'll actually stand it up and act out the full scenes. And it's how we make movies. Like, we're not very good screenwriters, but we know what makes good performances. So like, then that performance of where the scene goes then becomes the dialogue and the screenplay. And then by the end of the week, we have this vomit draft that is the movie. And then we do iron out drafts. We continually polish it to make it more cinematic and infuse the camera and the production design and whatever it is in the narrative to make it better. And then we record it as a podcast. So just like this, with a microphone, PJ and I will act out the full screenplay and then put in music and sound design so that we can hear it as a movie and make sure it doesn't suck. And there are times when we're recording it in my closet upstairs, and we're like, this isn't working. Like, this scene sucks. How do we make it shorter? How do we fuse these things together to keep the audience's attention? And then we change the script based on that. So, like, legitimately, it is this constantly changing art piece, performance art thing, and then it's entirely done in audio format before we show up on set. So you can hear the movie, and the cast and crew get sent the podcast version of it by the producers, so they can hear it as many times as they want before they show up, and they get the tone and the comedy and the punchlines and the cadence before they have to show up and act. and it's really valuable.
Do you what scene do you think was like the toughest for you guys that this process really helped?
That's a good question.
I mean, like, the scene to me of Jacqueline coming into the office, like, when you send a screenplay to somebody, it doesn't come across as funny. Like, I don't think Yorgos Lanthimos' movies, when you read them, like, Killing of a Sacred Deer, you'd be like, this is a weird fucking drama. Like, this is not a funny movie. And then when you watch it, it's like, this is hilarious. Like, same thing with Eyes Wide Shut. And so, like, when we were writing the movie, we constantly had the comedy in mind. So with the scene of Jacqueline coming into my office and she goes, can I have one? It's a Jolly Rancher. And I go, oh, yeah. And then she reaches down and grabs a handful. And then I go, you'll do great here. And it's like this joke about greed and how, like, you know, the whole agency is greedy. And then the whole power dynamic shifts because my assistant says, did your wife sit on your face this morning? And then it's hilarious. It's like one of the best punchlines in the movie. But immediately the guy gets terrified of, like, oh, my assistant of course reads my mail. And that's really terrifying to me. And then we spend the next whole montage in this, like, giallo scary sequence of me thinking about, did she really say it? And then we end it with me going, no, she said it. And then it cuts to the office. And it's the best punchline in the movie. And that whole thing of, like, it relies on the cinema of the movie. Like, you have to see it to actually get that joke is going to work. And it wouldn't work in screenplay format. So that's the biggest one for me of, like, the biggest swing of, I think this can work. And it took doing it in podcast form to realize that it would.
Does anyone want to jump in and ask some questions? Yeah.
What's up, dude?
Good to see you, man.
Feels like 100 years ago. It killed. It's so weird. Like, with the genre crowd, everybody is so down to be offended and, like, to get. I mean, y'all are too. Like, I mean, you're young, you get it. Like, but no, it was great.
My question is about crowd equity. That's Cummings. At what point in your career did you feel comfortable going out and reaching out to funds from other people?
Never. We still don't. It's always uncomfortable. It's parasite. You know, it's a weird thing of knocking on the rich people's door and saying, hey, I'm trying to make this movie. It's always that. And then for Thunder Road, we ran a Kickstarter campaign, and we had a couple of people give us money. And then once the Kickstarter campaign was completed, we had strangers from the internet reach out and say, oh, we'd love to buy a percentage of the film. And that was new to us. So we sold a share of the Thunder Road company for $12.5 grand to people in Canada, people in Belarus. Like, it was just kind of global. It was crazy. We're very lucky. And that's how we gap financed the film to raise the $190 grand that we needed to make that thing. And then PJ and I were talking about it. I was like, this could be the future. You could do this. And then every time I talked about it, people in Silicon Valley were like, oh, yeah, no, this is normal. Like, you post a campaign, and then Silicon Valley investors come in and buy shares of the company. And WeFunder was very new at the time. I think there was only 2 other movies on the platform, and they fucking sucked.
Yeah, it was. I hate to say it. It was one of those moments going on the website and seeing these other movies, and they had raised like hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we were like, they look terrible. We were like, what are we doing here? Like, this is an untapped market.
Yeah, there's a good quote that's attributed to The Economist magazine where a guy comes running into an office and he goes, there's a $100 bill on the sidewalk across the street. Everybody in the office goes, no, because if it was $100 on the street, somebody would pick it up. And that's the joke of, like, there is this completely untapped investor pool that you wouldn't realize. And then PJ and I kind of discovered, like, are we the only people that are going to do this thing? And then we ran the campaign, and we raised $350 grand in 12 days. And then after that, we had people from our lab, the short to feature lab, run campaigns and raise funds for $150 grand and shoot movies in Colombia, shoot movies in Michigan. Like, it is something where I feel like it actually is the future of film, and it isn't proselytized to the public, because if they do share that information, you become the competition instead of the subordinates. And the system doesn't support that. We had a good talk. We went out drinking the other night. It was great. you get to the point? Get the fuck out. So Kevin Changaris plays Johnny PayPal at the end of the film, and we dyed his eyebrows blonde, and he had to shave them because it's humiliating to have blonde. Sorry, continue.
Yeah, he didn't know what he was doing either. He was like, he was like, look, it's an interesting script, but I don't know if it was worth this. Like, man, I don't know.
He wanted to be the guy from Blade Runner. He wanted to be the bad guy from Blade Runner. Anyway, sorry, continue. Yeah, he's great. So Kevin, as Johnny PayPal, also plays Officer Bo in The Wolf of Snow Hollow, my previous film, and I beat him up and give him a black eye, and he's so funny. He's also in Thunder Road. He plays like a member of the police department there. So Kevin is very much like a Peter Sellers, where he is so specific and different, where you can trust him to play the part. There was a great actor named Ryan Masson who is like this Michael Shannon, incredible Shakespearean performer. And we auditioned him to play Johnny PayPal. And I was like, this guy's fucking great. And I feel so bad. I'm going to have to tell him he's going to lose the part to a comic. But it was very important to PJ and me that the bad guy is also funny. And like there are moments in that dialogue where he has to be weird and bizarre. He's like this guy. He has this bit where he's like, "What do you come down here to blow me? No, fuck. Anyway." And it's like this like weird gay hacker who's like living in the basement, becoming a billionaire. And it was like that's so much more interesting to me than like I love Agent Smith from The Matrix, where it's like this weird guy who like takes the microphone out and is obnoxious and is right a lot of the time. Like if you're going to film an argument, both parties have to be right. And Kevin was nailing it. And he was so committed and had been in our previous 3 features. And I was like, yeah, it'd be funny to have him be the bad guy in the movie. And he kills it. And actually, the ending of the scene is him opening up the champagne bottle and drinking it. And it was a hot champagne bottle. And he deep-throated himself on the thing and it just comes
Sprayed
out
it
everywhere.
yeah.
And I was like, this is brilliant. This is how we end the scene. It was
Yeah.
great. That wasn't
Yeah.
in the script. He's
Yeah.
fucking unbelievable.
Yeah, that's the internet. Someone with a tirade who can't drink champagne. Yeah, just going nuts.
Oh, you poor thing. That's the Thunder Road organ. Somebody's playing it. Anyway, sorry. Yeah, I'm excited shit.
Yeah.
We have to say I'm stoked. Or
Yeah,
we
we're
say-
pumped. We're thrilled.
Yeah, we've had to change our own vernacular because we've deprecated it so much in the film.
I mean,
Yeah.
we're all guilty of it, of this corporate doublespeak, as we say. It's like, yeah, let's keep talking. We're all excited. And we're like, you're not, though. I mean, like, it's just what you say at the end of a meeting because you have to say something. Yeah.
Hollywood.
Yeah.
Got a bunch of hands. Wow.
I'm so excited.
Yeah.
It's what you said about Agent Steinway. When I heard about the Espresso windows,
Yeah. They fired half of their staff in May of 2020. Yeah, sure. Oh, yeah, no. Everybody's dead over there. Yeah, good. I mean, it's a weird thing where, like in the top 4 agencies, almost there's been this mass exodus towards producing because they lost the WGA battle, and the only income that they'll have is from producing. It's the only way that they can grow as individuals, and so I'm not surprised that people are fleeing it like the fucking Titanic. And it's weird. It's going to change the entire landscape of Hollywood, and the buildings are going to collapse very slowly, and they're going to have to start being rented out by other organizations. And it's never funny to laugh at people losing their jobs, but when it's terrible people, it's okay. Romance. We haven't done romance yet, and the new movie that PJ and I are writing is this Victorian horror comedy buddy romance. There will be blood, and it's really
Thriller.
ghost story,
Yeah.
Victorian ghost story, and so we're writing that, and it's weird, like. It's bizarre to have as many genres in a movie as possible, but it feels like you're really activating all of the lobes of an audience's brain, we always say if you don't make jokes throughout your movies, your audiences will. And that's been my experience in watching movies of like, if there's no comedy, if it's completely austere, I'm making jokes the whole time because it's like this movie, you know, it's like Dune. Um, and so watching
Desert.
something like Parasite was really refreshing to me, and all of Bong's movies are really refreshing. Where it's like, and Hitchcock as well. Hitchcock was making jokes the whole time when he was making Rear Window and everything. Even Psycho, super dark movie. Even Frenzy, the most graphic fucking movie of all time. There's still jokes throughout.
Seven's funny.
Seven is fucking hilarious. Yeah. Seven is the darkest movie of all time. Uncle Dave incorporates so many great moments of Brad Pitt being an
Brad
idiot.
Pitt's such a goof.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm on my hobby horse talking about how wonderful David Fincher is, but yeah, he saw the movie at Berlinale, and we sent it to him, and it was the best feeling in the world. Where he was like, "Oh yeah, you guys are very talented," and I was like, "Cool, I can retire from making movies now." But like, there's a quote. I think it was from Martin Scorsese, but he says, "Those who know don't care, and those who care don't know." Like, the power dynamics are this weird thing where you feel like you are a subordinate to all these things and that they're in this other level, and it's not true. If you can just make movies that are impressive, it doesn't matter where it's coming from, around the world. You just have to do it yourself.
Thank you, Phil.
Yeah.
Let's keep talking.
So I feel like this is something I think about a lot. How there are some artists who need to focus on survival in order to just like get
Yep.
out and stuff to make
Yep.
a lot of their art. And then there are a lot of people who just have fun doing and want to make art for the sake of making art and for the sake of making art.
Yep.
How do you like not get disappointed? Because I think about that every day. It just makes me sad.
I am so glad to hear you say that. So we had that the entire time at Emerson. We were not creatives. We didn't have a sketch pad. We were always the scientists. PJ wanted to go into aeronautical engineering. And
Yeah.
like,
If I
as
could
an
do the
acting
math,
major-
I wouldn't be doing this.
And so we felt like that disqualified us from making artwork for years. So I was a producer for a long time. PJ was a commercial actor. Like, we had no business making our own movies, and we constantly felt like we were pushed out of that club until we realized that the clubs are imaginary. They live in our mind, and you just have to do it yourself and make better shit than what you're seeing at film festivals. But you're speaking more about the wealth inequality that happens where there are people that you see at these film festivals who are short film producers, and you see them traveling around. It's like, how the fuck do they afford to be short film producers for a long time? Like, what is that? And it's just wealthy parents. That's just the only way that you can do it, or a wealthy uncle, or whatever the fucking thing is. And it was hell. So like, for a long time, I lived under that mindset, and I was still working as a branded producer at College Humor, working for people who were cheesy as hell, making comedy that wasn't funny. And I kept thinking, just let me in, just let me fucking do the thing. I can do it better. And that became ambition for me, this anger, this revolutionary, like Robin Hood, let's cut the rich people's heads off kind of mindset. And that became the Thunder Road short film. I was driving at a 45-minute commute from North Hollywood to West Hollywood, and I could write this thing. I could do 3 rehearsals, and then drive there, and 3 on the drive home. And it was this, it's so petty. I'm so sorry. But that pettiness, that anger of these people being celebrated more than you was so valuable to me because I was able to get the thing out of me. It was the reason why I spent my savings account on this Saturday film shoot in Pasadena. Like, somebody clapped. Yeah, like if you know it's going to be good, if you are certain it's going to be transcendent, this thing that is going to, I was scared I was driving to inappropriate, that I was going to die before I could make it. Like, that's how you should feel when you're making a piece of artwork. It shouldn't be fluff. It shouldn't be anything these people that I was working with were doing. You have to do it that way. And it's only going to get worse, especially with COVID. Wealth inequality is only going to get worse. Apparently, the new Parasite TV show is about that. It's true. But yeah, no, it's a battle that you're going to have to fight your whole life, and you can make something on a Saturday with your friends in your apartment. When we won Sundance, literally I'm on my hobby horse. I'm so sorry, filibustering, screaming directly at you. I'm sorry.
This is your
It's a
fault.
lot to
Yeah.
deliver over the next couple of years. But legitimately, 5 of the short films that won the grand jury prize in animation or in international U.S. jury prize or grand jury prize were all single location films. Had nothing to do with the budget, had nothing to do with anything. It was a single location thing that was shot on one day for $4.5 grand. The thing that was impressive was the craftsmanship of the cinema. Had nothing to do with the budget. And I'm glad that I came up in that class. Because I see all of these AFI shorts getting made that are 250 grand. And it's like, there's no way that you can compete with that. It's insane. Sorry. I should just stop talking. You, Pete, you carry the rest of the night.
No, dude, doing great. Yeah.
Hines. I think we called him Prin the first time because it was a reference to the Scarlet Letter. But then Hines, it just sounded right. It felt corporate. But no. Should there be? Who's Hines? Is it an agent? Oh, well, fuck him. Billy Hines. Get the fuck out. So Billy lived at
this. Yeah.
This is crazy. How do you know Billy Hines? Oh my God. We're gonna dish.
Sweet Billy Hines?
No. So
Oh, poor
so
sweet Billy
I grew up-
Hines.
Is he here tonight? I want him to get punched in the face.
Come out, Billy. Come out.
So no.
Yeah.
So Billy, this is crazy. We're gonna talk for a while.
Oh,
Billy was a quarterback on our football team, and I was the football videographer, and so I was always getting like towels thrown at me and everything. Lovely guy. And literally, he was the guy. I took him to New Orleans, and his house is the house from Gone with the Wind that we drove past.
Yeah, that house
and you
was
took the
sick.
picture.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Oh, that's Billy Hines?
Anyway,
Oh,
that's
sweet
Billy
Billy
Hines. So
Hines.
she worked for Billy Hines. That's crazy. I think it probably was influenced by that, now that I think about it. Please don't tell anybody here. Anyway, next question.
I mean, that was a dope house.
It was.
A reference is Gone with the Wind.
Let's hang out afterwards. Yeah.
Yeah, wow. Holy shit.
Thank you for coming. I recently chanced upon early collaboration of yours on Vimeo. It's like where you're playing a guy who's like making a movie that is going to be like a big.
This is Jay Calvin.
Yes. Yeah, and it was hilarious.
It's a masterpiece.
But I was wondering, kind of back on the funding thing, how did you gain the confidence over the years to continue to raise more money and manage more money and to bigger teams, and you're kind of building a repertoire of like actors and people that you've been working with, and then also how are you making a living while trying to do
Yeah. Thank you. Cool. That's the most important question. Like, how the fuck do you make money? How do you do it? So, so I was making $1,500 a week. So it's $1,000 after taxes, working at College Humor. And I did that for 8 months. And then I was managing different budgets where I was able to organize 2 or 3 branded sketch comedy things a week. So it built up my confidence to organize a team and do the thing. And then I was doing that for 8 months, and I had a savings account of about $5 grand. It was probably about $4 grand. And then when I needed to do the Thunder Road short film, I was like, cool, I have the money to be able to do it. Little did I know that when you sign up for a location agreement, you have to pay a deposit first. So it's twice the budget. So in order to make a $4,500 movie, you have to have $6,500 to make the thing. It sucked. So I had to sell my wedding rings. Didn't need them anymore. It's fine. And then
Billy. It's not related. Not related.
and then all of my Criterion box sets of the Cassavetes and fucking everything. It sucked. Everybody groans.
Oof,
it's great. They know that feeling of going to a pawn shop and selling things. Anyway, so that's how I was able to finance that thing. I was doing Lil Dicky music videos on the side, which was like $1,800 every time I would do it. Not very much. And then when I finally got greenlit to do the Thunder Road feature, I own 38.5% of that movie because of the way that we built it outside of the studio system. So if you bought Thunder Road on iTunes, every dollar that comes in, I'm making 38.5 cents on, which is insane. You would never get that deal in Hollywood. For Wolf of Snow Hollow, I'm probably making 2 cents for every dollar that comes in, if that. So because of the way that we did it on our own, it was financially viable for us. And then also, I was shooting commercials. I was like the spokesperson for Kahlua for a minute, which is insane. Don't look it up.
It is
please.
insane.
It's
Definitely look it up. It is amazing. It is weird as shit. Yeah.
humiliating.
It's very funny.
But that allowed me to finance Thunder Road, and that's the reason that feature got made in a crazy way. I don't know. We did J Calvin when I was living in San Francisco, and I would drive down and sleep in a tent in Tony's and PJ's backyard, and we would shoot that every so often. And so it took about a year to shoot, and it's great. It's about a director who's terrible trying to make short films in North Hollywood, and I got to play the guy. It's great. I'm glad you got to see it. So before I lived in Los Angeles, I lived in San Francisco in the North Bay, in Marin and Mill Valley and Stinson Beach for about 6 years. And I felt like it was basically living on the moon if I wanted to get a job in the film industry. And I got more work living in North Hollywood for the first 2 months than I previously did in the first 2 years of living in San Francisco. So there is value to being present and local to film productions. I think it is valuable to stay out here. But if you're trying to do it on your own, like, I mean, you know, Red Rocket and Tangerine and all those movies are shot in Tampa. Like, if you wanted to actually go out of your way, you would be celebrated by film festivals and distributors by having something that was a non-coastal film. Like, there is something to Terrence Malick making movies out of Austin and doing weird stuff. I think you can make a movie anywhere you want and not be kicked out of the festival circuit. And sometimes that's more celebrated than anything that's shot in LA. So it depends on the career you want.
Yeah, I wish it was easier to do in different places. I mean, we just have people we know here and our friends are here, but if you have a good friend group that can make a movie in any city, like...
Yeah, like Beta Test was the first feature we shot in LA. The other ones were shot in Austin and Utah. So like it doesn't really... Who's from Utah? What part of Utah are you from?
Provo.
You poor thing.
That's awesome.
No, we shot that in Altadena. We shot The Wolf of Snow Hollow all like through Colville and Salt Lake City and everything. It's crazy. It's freezing. Anyway, yeah, it depends on the career you want. Like, you can make movies on an iPhone or on a camera you can get from a Best Buy and compete at the level that James Cameron's on. Like, technologically, there's no difference from what anybody else is doing. You just have to make better stuff. And sometimes you can make better stuff outside of Hollywood. Often you can make better stuff. Like, the stuff that screens in Cannes never is in Los Angeles. Like, you kind of have to go and make something weird. Yeah, for this one, so for the earlier films like Thunder Road, I knew I was going to use the Vitamin String Quartet ending song because it was making me cry, and like that I knew would work for audiences. And then with this one, we're kind of clueless, so we like tried to get the rights to a Bruno Nicolai Giallo soundtrack from a film called The Red Queen Kills 7 Times for the opening music, and then it was going to cost...
it was like $1 million, or it wasn't $1 million, but it might as well have been.
It was
like
like $50,000 for 12% of the rights or whatever. It was like, there's no way that we'd be able to do it. And so my fiance and post-producer, Julia, found this website called APM Music, which is really great. And they have like hundreds of thousands of songs where not only is it the original like wave file, it's also stems of all of the wave files. So you can go through and it's just the cellos or just the percussion, and you can separate everything out. And we had 16 months to edit and do the
and you can
sound
get
mix for the film.
nuts with those stems. Yeah, you could go in and warp them and
So,
make
like,
your own music. Yeah,
So like the majority of the film is Vivaldi, and we were able to like separate different instruments and slow them down and make them spooky and make them big for any of these moments that we wanted. And we wanted to have this kind of classical feel where it feels like, you know, this glamorous appreciation of the Hollywood industry world. And then we just kind of played around with it for a month, and that became the final soundtrack of the film. But literally, APM was like, you can have a blanket contract for $4,000, and you can use any of the hundreds of thousands of tracks that we want, however you want. And we're like, yeah, we'll do that.
Yeah. Taking classical instruments, which is kind of the idea of the letter service, and then warping them through electronic filters.
Yeah, so
Just
like
kinda
me
felt like a
going
good
to
way
the
to do
hotel
it.
room is actually Vivaldi slowed down to like 20%. It feels like Inception or something like that. It feels like this big spooky thing, but it was actually just us in Premiere dicking around, being like, "Oh my god, this is so much fun."
That's
you know?
really weird, man. That's pretty-
Yeah.
Hold on. I just wanted to ask how the features on the road, did you have that idea in mind when you did the short? And how
No.
it evolved? Because it was so perfect for the
Cool.
the song without,
Yeah, good.
but I'm curious on how you got to the feature part.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, thanks. So I wrote the short film on the drives to work, and that became that process of being sad and down and out in a corporate job, and then for a year I was telling everybody, "Oh, it could never be a feature," and then we're talking about it at the barbecue, and I got drunk, and somebody was like, "What if you opened the movie with that scene?" Because the whole time I was thinking, like, screenplay format, that's got to be the climax. That's the most important moments of this character's life. So then, like, the previous 60 minutes would have to be me, like, having a shitty relationship with my mom, and then she dies. And, like, who wants to see that? Like, nobody wants to see that. It's like, and also, like, 8 Mile is kind of like that, and I'm not going to beat 8 Mile. Like, that movie's fucking awesome. And so then somebody was like, "Oh, it could be neat to do the opening." And I was like, that would never work. And then later that night, I was like, "Oh, my God, that could work." And then I was thinking about it, and I was like, well, what would be the rest of the movie? The rest of the movie would be this guy having to convince his daughter to like him again, and it would be like King of the Hill. And I was like, I could do that. I couldn't do something more profound than the short film, but I could definitely do the Mike Judge, kitchen sink drama of trying to get this 11-year-old to think that you're cool again. And then PJ was gone with his now wife, but he was like staying at her place, and his basement was open, and so was his refrigerator. And so I had like a 30 rack of Budweiser Heavy, and then I listened to the Nebraska album of Springsteen, and I wrote for 5 days. And I was like, I could just do this thing. And I had this outline in the Google or the Apple Reminders app on my phone, and I could shift the reminders around to be like, this would be this scene, this would be this scene. And then eventually I screen grabbed it, and then that became this outline, this like photograph that I printed out on his wall. And I was like, okay, cool, now I just have to go through this thing. And I would act out all the scenes out loud, and then that became the script. It's the first time I ever really did that, and it worked. Yeah, so I play like a 9-year-old girl. It's humiliating to listen to, and that's why I haven't shared it with anybody. But it's just like the movie, and it's like language is so complex, and English and comedy is so complex that like it's so difficult to read that on the page and get the full thing. And so audio was the best tool that I had. It was cheap. It was like something I could do in a garage in his basement. And so it was like, cool, I could just record this thing and make it work. And use the same software that I was using to edit the film as Premiere, Adobe Premiere, and I could put in music and sound design and have it feel more emotional. I grew up listening to the Harry Potter audiobooks, and Jim Dale plays Hagrid and Hermione in the same scenes, and the brain fills in the blanks. It's like, oh yeah, it's just Hagrid and Hermione talking. And it's like, I was like, all right, cool, I could do that.
I wasn't gone. I was there the whole time. I like could not sleep. It was exhausting. Like, you were so loud. It was so late.
He was falling in love with his future wife, to be honest. It's crazy.
Nightmare time of our lives.
If anybody has to pee, I'm so sorry. This is going way longer than I will not be offended if you jump up and run away.
Yeah. Wait. What time is it?
Don't look. Next question.
Yeah, over there.
Yeah, who you got? Nope. I do it all the time. That was a big hurdle for me. So in the first pseudo feature I did, I shot a movie after graduating college in 2009, the year I graduated, and I brought all these friends down. We shot a movie for $5,000 in New Orleans, Louisiana, and I didn't cast myself. Are you from New Orleans? What part? Okay, cool. I'm from Metairie. What high school? Okay, you fucker. I went to I went to Country Day with Billy Hines.
Oh, Billy. Oh, Billy.
We beat you all the time. Anyway, more importantly, far more importantly, no. So I didn't cast myself in that because I thought that people would think I was a megalomaniac, that I was this egomaniac, and that like, oh, this guy thinks he's very clever. And I didn't want to be Mark Duplass, so I didn't want to do that. It's also from Metairie. That's why I say that. No jokes. Are you from Metairie? Get the fuck out. Where? Okay, wow, that's crazy. Crazy. Anyway. No way. Oh my god. Okay, we'll hang out afterwards. Anyway, but no, I had those neuroses of like somebody's gonna think that I'm an asshole, and then I saw Summer Heights High. I saw all of Chris Lilly's work from Australia, and he plays literally every character in his shows, and I was like, oh, I could do this. That's fine. If Chris can do it, I can do it. And he's been canceled now, but the Thunder Road short, I was like, okay, cool. I can pretend to be this person, and that will give me the confidence to do it. So never pick a lane. You can do all the things at once, and Jackie Chan's been doing it for 50 years. It's okay. The jokes have to be the same. The punchlines dramatically, or the horror stuff still has to be the same. But like when you're working with an actor, that's the job of like you show up in a location and it's way smaller than you imagined, and then the dolly's not going to fit in, so you have to shoot it handheld. And I was like, all right, well then what does the camera language have to be? There's 1,000 different things that happen. You just adapt to physicalizing the thing rather than it being a podcast.
I mean, it was originally supposed to be a flight of European stairs that
the opening
she gets
that
thrown down in the
off
middle.
of. And then it was like, well, we don't have those stairs in America. Those are only in Paris. And it was like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. And I was
all
like,
right, well,
I guess a balcony
throw
could
off
work.
a fucking balcony, I guess. Yeah.
And so, yeah, there's all of those, just the changes that you have to do. That's directing. David Fincher says that. He says, you never know what directing is until you show up on set and you have 5 shots left to get and the sun's going down. You're only going to get 2. That's just the nature of the beast. But no, doing it in audio format is so valuable because a joke is very difficult to get across unless it's out loud. And most of the actors are never offended. They're always thrilled to hear my first pass on it, and then they get to elevate it from there with physicalizing it. And so we've been very lucky that everybody is down to listen to it and show up and do the thing. That's interesting. I'll answer half of that. So the bit where I'm shouting at Jacqueline is actually verbatim from an agent at one of the top 4, I'll say it, WME, to an assistant. And we heard the testimony, I wrote it down, and then we put it into the script. And then there was a moment where it was like, this is just really cruel. This isn't funny. And so I put in the thing of, okay, great. So this is a failure. So I can't say exactly what I want you to say right now because of the new direction the agency and the country is going. And that bit is put in by the 2 of us. So that's like put on top because I knew it would make the audience laugh that this guy's like listening to Joe Rogan. And then at the end of that sequence, we had written it in a way where I say, you don't know the first fucking thing about my personal life. And then I walk inside of the office, and it was just very cruel. And that was what the testimony was from the source. And then our buddy Thomas Cross, who is the production coordinator, shows up on that day and was like, I think it'd be funny if he says something just like completely weird after that, just like something that would indicate to the assistant that she knows everything about his personal life. And he was like, what if she brings up the Pepto-Bismol? And like that he has this ulcer and that he's going to get terrible diarrhea if he doesn't have it immediately after his meal. And I was like, that's brilliant. That's going in the script. And so like while I was in makeup, an hour before we shot that, that got put in because I knew it was going to make people laugh. So there's always these tiny pivots. We're lucky that we have an incredible team that we've built for the last 10 years where we can rely on the production designer and the production coordinator for dialogue in the film because they get the language.
Also, I mean, we could have gone way harder with like the drug use and the cocaine and the rampant sex in the office, but I mean that is a big part of it. But that kind of honestly, I hate to say it would have been too like Wolf of Wall Street, like not it wouldn't have felt as real. We kind of wanted to focus more on the less glamorous side of the office world where it's not cool and drugs and sex and just kind of lame and just people yelling at their assistants like a fucking loser. And it's not cool because that's 99% of the job and it's not the sex and drugs of Wolf of Wall Street, which I guess we could have gone down, but that's not real and that's not as appealing.
So to me, that's just the studio executive in my mind that's saying that. And really, studio executives are terrified of the public. They don't know what they want. And anytime one rogue tweet comes out saying, I was offended by this thing, they cater to that person. And that's not what independent film is all about. So like, as an independent filmmaker, we don't have to obey those rules. We get to show real language, we get to show real sex and real violence because that's the audience we're trying to hit. There is a chasm in the market that is just thirsty for unsanitized filmmaking. And right now, because of the political generational shifts with younger people, you end up making this sanitized content or the studios end up making the sanitized content because they're terrified of what the people will say. And we've never been terrified of what the people will say because we are the people. We get to, we've been Redditors for the last 15 years or whatever, and our attention span has been built on that. We know what people find actually wholesome, actually funny, and actually offensive.
Read way too many comments. Yeah.
Well, on that note, there is that sort of almost shocking moment of the stabbing in the neck, which is like almost like a Haneke moment, just like out of nowhere, right into the neck. And it's so early in the film. It's like, well, there's no way you're going to turn this movie off.
It's great. So in France, we introduced it. It was like, the movie's a comedy. Enjoy the film. And then we walk off. And then it's like people, like there's a Swedish conversation. And halfway through the murder, people are like, am I in the right fucking movie? Like,
Yeah.
What is going on here? But we did that on purpose. White Ribbon is in my top 5. I love that movie so much. Cachet is the same. It's like, Cachet is actually very similar to this film, where it's like people receiving weird shit on their doorstep. And then it derails their lives. Yeah, I don't know. I think like that kind of modern masochism is so interesting in film because it shocks the audience into what is possible. Like it's an admission to how sanitized most movies have become. Where like you watch that scene and then you watch Frenzy by Hitchcock or any movie that was made in the 1970s, like Suspiria, where they actually cut a woman's chest open and stab the beating heart, and it's like, no, you can do whatever you want in movies. Like we shouldn't have these guardrails.
Anyone else? Yep.
I feel like we're just laughing the whole time of like, as soon as that happens, if I come to him and I'm like, oh my God, Thomas just had this like brilliant idea. He's like, oh my, let's do it. Like what the worst that can happen is we just stick to the script and we do it a couple of times that way. And
Honestly,
then we
like
shoot it.
I wish we had more time to have moments like that. And most of the
In
time
18
we don't
days.
have time to be like, yeah, that's funny, let's try it. Yeah, like get everyone to go shoot it again. Yeah, I would love to have more chances to do that. The agency stuff was the only few days we really had chances to kind of try stuff.
Yeah, we shot the agency
significantly,
stuff in the
yeah.
leasing office in our offices. So like the upstairs, and we like walked into the leasing office. We're like, hey, we're trying to pay rent, but also this is great. Like we could probably shoot in here, and then they were like, well, cool, it's open on the weekends. You can have it for free, and they let us shoot there for free. And we designed the entire offices to look like the inside of WME or CAA or UTA. and the production designer had the Instagram location based on all of his agencies, so he could go through and see where people were tagging themselves at these places. So he could get the production design and the wardrobe and all of that right. It was amazing. And so we had 3 days at this space that were in our headquarters where we were storing all the gear. It was the shortest commute ever, and we could just dick around and bully our friends into pretending to be assholes for a minute. It was great. It was like, but really, the majority of the film is all so forensic. There's no time to improv. You know, like if you improv at all, the boom mic isn't in the right spot and the camera's not in focus, and so it has to be done identical between the takes.
I mean, improv's great, but I feel like 90% of the time it's just different. It's not better. I don't know. I mean, you have so much time ahead of time to get the right thing you need. It's rare to spontaneously come up with something that's just incredibly brilliant. I welcome it for sure. It just takes time.
17 and a half.
17,
Yeah. So we shot 15 days in and around LA, and then we shot in Lake Arrowhead for like 2 days. So like all of that Terrence Malick stuff and the sex scene by the fireplace, or the fight scene by the fireplace.
Yeah. Can we talk about that too?
No. But all of that we shot in Lake Arrowhead, and then
Could have been longer.
The diner scene at the end. The diner scene at the end was in Lake Arrowhead, and then that was it. So it was like literally all of this LA stuff. Yeah, there's no time. Thunder Road was 14 days, and then Wolf of Snow Hollow was 23 days. So it was like the studio movie is the longest time we ever had. It's always a sprint of like, okay, now we get the shot, and then the producer's like, are we good? I'm like, yep, let's move on. And then we move to the next location. It's exhausting. Sex scene.
Yeah, that scene is fantastic. And it's like, it's one of those scenes that's just like the undescribable, unique pleasure of watching one of your movies. It's just like, I don't know what it is. It's like, it's sort of like I can't
Drawn out and dramatic.
I genuinely can't describe like the unique characteristic of your films, but you just have these like scenes that come out of nowhere that are like weird and wonderful at the same time. And it's like that scene is a great example of something that is just like, this is a little bit off.
Yeah. I'd never done a sex scene before. And obviously we had intimacy coordinators and it was like very safe. But then to do this one, PJ and I were like joking about it, like that it is this kind of kung fu scene of like that she's beating the hell out of me during sex. And it can't be sexy. It has to be ridiculous. And so like that whole time when she's like beating me up and like forcing me to choke her and she's biting my lip and I'm like, what the hell is going on here with my partner? It's funny. It's like, it's not Michael Douglas and Glenn Close and it's supposed to be sexy or pornographic or whatever. It's like, no, this is ridiculous. Sex is so ridiculous on film and audiences prefer to laugh at it because it's uncomfortable. Like we've become such Puritans that it's like, it's an easier pandering joke to make it hilarious. And that's how I feel, like as an audience member.
One of the best sex scenes ever is MacGruber. It's
Yeah, and Team
Most
America.
realistically absurd and ridiculous, and yeah,
Ugly.
yeah, just ugly and awkward and weird, and yeah, it's funny.
Yes.
So I have a couple quick questions. The first one being, I'm not very smart. Could you explain the very ending with the waitress and the heart and the crab?
Yeah, sure. So the movie's about temptation, and at the very end of the film, my fiance or my wife at that point, Caroline, does the full breakdown, the oracle breakdown of like temptation is a thing that happens. It's digital now, but it's nothing new. And the goal is for us to stay together. And then immediately I get the check and there's a number and like a heart sign from this dime piece waitress in like Arrowhead. And it's a funny joke. Not even a funnier joke. Off the record, it's our buddy Tony's phone number, and his sister's name is Amber. And so we were hoping that people would call that number and be like, "Hey, I'm looking for Amber." And he'd be like, "Who is this person?" Anyway. But the goal of that is to show that temptation is always there. It doesn't. It's not something that is specific to any certain medium. And this male ego thing of having to spread the seed is something you have to live with for the rest of your life. Women too, but like that aspect was the part of the movie that we found to be most interesting and why we wrote it. And so it was just funny to us to have it be this like ultimate temptation in front of your wife. And she goes, "You ready to go?" And you go, "Yep." 100%.
Especially as she just delivered like the
This
thesis.
beautiful
Yeah, this
No Country
eloquent,
for Old
lovely.
Men monologue.
Yeah, we're like, okay, we're good now. Just
yeah,
kidding.
yeah,
Here you go.
yeah.
And it's never going to end.
It was a joke.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And then the other question is, like, as someone who's been on both sides, the corporate sort of world of filmmaking and the independent part of filmmaking, what would you say to someone who is interested in making, big budget, maybe studio films or TV show, something like that?
This is the perfect way to end the Q&A. Start small. Make the things that you can afford to do on your own. Short films are great. Focus on making something that's a short duration that you can make perfect. And then grow slowly and never expect anything from the system. Instead, try to win the attention of the audience. It is a war for attention that you're fighting. Make stuff that is compelling, that is better than the stuff that you're seeing on television, that is more subversive than the stuff that you're seeing on television, that is important and profound and cinematic and well-crafted. And if you continue to grow slow over a 10-year period, people will take you seriously and start giving you paychecks. That's the best advice I can give to anybody here.
Okay, so you guys are opening in theaters on Friday, but it's also available streaming.
It is on fine platforms everywhere.
All right, I cannot wait for your next film and the one after that. It's just such a joy every time you release a movie. So thank you guys so
Thank you everybody
much
for coming,
coming
and
out
thank
tonight.
you for the
Thank you.
moderation. Thank you everybody for coming. It means the world to us.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll hang out outside if anybody wants to talk.